The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. The Pharisees went and took counsel how to entangle Jesus in his talk. And they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true, and you teach the way of God truthfully, and care for no man, for you do not regard the position of men. Tell us then, what do you think? Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the money for the tax. And they brought to him a coin. And Jesus said to them, Whose likeness, whose inscription is on it? They said, It is Caesar's. Then he said to them, Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise be to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Lead questions for today. Question number 1. The Lord's is the earth and the fullness thereof. The Lord's is the earth and the fullness thereof. Psalm 24. How is this words of Psalm 24 demonstrated in the first reading? And how is this passage, meaning the Lord's is the earth and the fullness thereof, how is it linked with the gospel? Question 2. Why do you think the question of paying taxes to Caesar was such a dangerous question that Jesus felt trapped when asked that question? Question 3. Quote, Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. Give unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. From today's gospel. What, in your opinion, is Caesar's? And what do you think is God's? What is Caesar's own? And what is God's own? Are these advanced level questions? I miss Ekene. Today is Ekene's birthday. And she's not here to answer questions. I miss her. I miss Wayemi. Because with them, there were no advanced level questions. All of them were easy. Question 4. What is the meaning of, quote, conscientious objection? Big words. What's the meaning of conscientious objection? Give examples of situations when a Christian is called upon to apply this principle. We have a number of lawyers in the house, learned men and women in the house. So that question 4 is particularly for you. Yes, Victor.
I am not a lawyer, but I would like to attempt question 4.
Sometimes pharmacists know conscientious objection.
Absolutely. Now, what I understand by conscientious objection is the fact that even if there is a law, all right, in the land saying or approving a certain thing, that as a Christian you can decide to deliberately not heed to that law.
Disobey that law.
Yeah, to disobey the law.
And suffer the consequences of disobeying.
Absolutely. A classical example was what happened in America when the gay law was passed, or rather the bill was passed into law, and then a lady in a particular county,
Marriage registry.
yeah, exactly, the marriage registry, was supposed to marry two men, and as a Christian, she felt that that was not the type of marriage that has been ordained by God, and for that reason, she deliberately refused to marry them, and then she was actually sentenced to some months in prison. And then even when she came out of prison eventually, and she was still asked to marry them, she refused and was willing to go back to prison to suffer the consequence.
That is a classic example of conscientious objection. Now, can you give me an example of conscientious objection in the Nigerian context?
In the Nigerian context, for example, I know that abortion is illegal, all right, in the country. However, there are still places where they conduct abortion, and then there are certain drugs that they will need during these processes.
And they come to you, and they come to you, pharmacists.
They will write a prescription, for us to dispense such products, and so for me, I would rather say no, I won't give it, and then annoy the customer, and then lose whatever I'm supposed to gain from that transaction.
That one is a small example. If it is a matter of customer, I mean, you are, yeah.
There's even another example that just came to mind of a guy who was asked to sign something in his office, that was supposed to, assist some form of fraud in his office, and he actually refused. He was sacked, and for a long time he has not had a job, but he was willing to sacrifice that job, on account of not getting involved in
now
fraud.
My dear friends, the big word expression conscientious objection, let me simplify it. You object to an action on account of your conscience.
Yeah.
Is that easier?
Yeah.
You object to an action on account of your conscience. Conscientious, that becomes an adjective, right? Conscientious, now objective objection. Now the point is, a lot of what is wrong in this country can be blamed on the inability of many believers, many Christians, to apply the principles of their faith to say no to a number of things, because they know that they will suffer some inconvenience. They may lose their job, they may lose friends, they may lose customers, as in the case of pharmacists and others, and so they just join the bandwagon. Thank you. Give him a round of applause. Give it to Orahachi.
Father, I would like to answer number one. In the first reading, Isaiah was talking about Cyrus, and God was speaking of Cyrus, that he had chosen him, he has so named him, even without him knowing him, and the purpose was so that all men may know that he is the Lord. He has all the power, and he owns the earth. I think that clearly expresses that the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof.
And that he can choose anyone he likes
to do
his will. Even the worst pagan can be chosen by God to
do his will, as in the case of Nebuchadnezzar as well. And he said, how is the passage linked with the gospel? I think where Christ says, give back to God what belongs to God, Christ was trying to express to the people that even if taxes, as they were trying to ask, belongs to Caesar, but everything, including the economy, their lives, their sacrifices, and all things belong to God himself.
Including Caesar himself.
Including Caesar himself.
Give her a round of applause. Yes, Emmanuel.
Father, I would like to attempt question 2. What I think about the question of paying taxes to Caesar was so dangerous that Jesus felt trapped when asked. At that time in the history of Israel, they were under the Roman Empire, being ruled by the Roman Empire. And also, they were nationalists who felt so aggrieved being ruled by the Roman Empire. Father, with those who felt that they don't have to be ruled by the Roman Empire, if Jesus said, pay taxes to Caesar, then the Pharisees and those who came to him felt that he was against the Israeli nation.
Okay.
And if he says, don't pay taxes to Caesar, then they will instigate that he is instigating the people not to be submissive to the Roman Empire. So whichever way he answered that question, he was going to be trapped. And that is why I felt that.
So either if he says don't pay to Caesar, then he is calling for insurrection, for rebellion. If he says pay taxes to Caesar, oh, you have joined them against your motherland, against the Israeli nation. Give him a round of applause. Okay. Yes, who else had his hand there? Who is behind? Solomon. Number
3.
Okay, we have almost answered it. Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Just to add that, in my opinion, what is Caesar's is our duty, our civic duty to the state.
Correct. Our civic
duties to the state.
Do Christians have civic duties endorsed by God? I want the answer clearly.
Yes.
Do Christians have civic duties endorsed by God? And if they violate those duties, are they good children of God? Oh, I see.
And then, of course, what is God is to live our life model after Christ. As Micah 6:8 says, to walk humbly with our God, to act with justice, and to love tenderly. If we imbibe those values of Christ, of course, we are living out the life of God. So in my opinion, what is of Caesar is civic duty to state, and then what is of God is living out the life model after Christ.
Okay. Give me and Solomon a round of applause. Okay. They came to Jesus and says, "Teacher, is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?" And Jesus' answer is, "Show me the money for the tax. What money do you use for the tax?" Now, whose likeness, whose inscription is this? It is Caesar's, they said. And Jesus' answer in that case, oh yeah, hand over to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. Now, the coin belongs to Caesar because the image of Caesar is on the coin, right? I told you that when I spent a year in Germany, the send-off gift I got was this. Was a denarius. Was one denarius, which I still have. The inscription, the face of Caesar, by that time Caesar Tiberius, was inscribed on the coin. But whose face is inscribed on you? Whose likeness are you? Can you see the difference? Well, if the coin has the face of Caesar, give it to Caesar. But you and Caesar himself, whose likeness is Caesar himself? Because God created us all in his likeness. The Pharisees and Herodians were bitter political enemies. They did not agree on anything except when it comes to setting a trap for Jesus. That was the only time they agreed. The Pharisees rejected the paying of taxes to Caesar, a foreign oppressive king, seeing it as an infringement of the divine right of God, because they were running a theocracy. The Herodians were supporters of Herod the Great and his family, so they favored collaboration with the Roman authorities and paying taxes to Caesar. Emmanuel, can you see that complements what you are saying? There were actually political parties, as it were, groups that supported, even among the Jews, that supported the paying of taxes to Caesar. They were called the Herodians. Now, the question was framed in such a way that whichever way Jesus answered would land him in trouble, as Emmanuel explained. You understand that? Now, the Pharisees and the Herodians tried to lay the ground for a charge of treason against Jesus. So there was collaboration among the enemies of Jesus in order to lay a charge of treason against him. If he said no, it is not permissible. He could be charged with treason before the Roman authorities. If he said yes, it is permissible, he will be guilty of disloyalty to the Jewish people. He will make himself unpopular before his fellow countrymen and women. Whichever way, the answer will land him in trouble. Jesus was aware of the interrogator's malice, but he will not be worsted. Show me, he said, one of those tax coins whose face is on it. Oh, Caesar's. Give unto Caesar then what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. Jesus is saying to them, if that is the emperor's head, give the emperor what belongs to the emperor. What is of the emperor. If you are willing to carry the coin which carries Caesar's effigy, then you should be willing to give back to Caesar what is Caesar's. As you know, if you read the New Testament very clearly, Jesus never carried money in his pocket at all. Do you remember that? When they harassed them for tax, he told Peter to go and open the mouth of the fish. Then they had a treasurer called Judas, but he never carried any money. If you are willing to carry the coin which bears Caesar's effigy, then you should be willing to give back to Caesar what is Caesar's. And then he added his real answer, and his real answer is, give to God what is God's. And what does it mean? You must recognize God as the supreme sovereign, to whom all the hearts of men and women really belong. And you know, can you see the link with the first reading about King Cyrus? Can you see the link? King Cyrus was a pagan king. And that reading kept saying, though you do not know me, though you do not know me, I will make you a fortress for the sake of my servant Jacob. It should reaffirm our faith in the fact that God can use anyone from anywhere for the benefit of his children. Give to God what carries God's imprint. And I have already asked you, what is it that carries God's imprint? Only you. Us. So, if you make gele, and the gele has the president's image on it, give to the president what belongs to the president. But give to God what belongs to God, and what belongs to God, you yourself. And the president himself belongs to God. Give to God all that is created in the image of God. What God wants is not some silver or gold coin. Give to God your heart and your soul. Give to God a purposeful, meaningful, God-fearing life. Part of what you give to God, as I said to Solomon, part of what you give to God is the life of a good citizen, of a law-abiding citizen, is part of what you offer to God. Many people do not know this. That is why the churches are so full of praise worshippers, praising God, but refusing to pay their taxes. Praising God, but violating all regulations. Praising God, violating procurement regulations. Violating traffic regulations. All kinds of things. And your praise is not really acceptable to God when you have not given all to God. Do you understand that? Give to God your heart, because he created you. Give to God a life of obedience, a life of surrender. It is also what we had discussed about conscientious objection. It is also an offering to God. When there is a sinful policy, when there is an evil policy, an unjust policy, you offer to God conscientious objection. Do you understand that? That is what God will expect you to do as his son or his daughter. Give to God a God-fearing life. I mean, right now we have all kinds of problems. All over the world, we are having ethnic and racial bigotry. If you are in the midst of a people that are thoroughly bigoted in their views, what do you offer to God? What will you need to offer to God in that circumstance? You courage to stand, if possible, if necessary, alone. Courage to stand alone. I saw on social media just a day or two ago somebody that went to the internet and searched for some pox, cow pox. Because if you go on media, you can see cows with cow pox, right? And then he took the picture and wrote that the Nigerian government has poisoned 80,000 cows and sent down south so that people will now catch cow pox. Please stop eating cows or meat. And of course, the next comment that followed it is, how can anyone believe this? But if you think that people are not going to believe it, you are being foolish. Millions of people will believe it. Do you understand? Millions of people will believe it. Not knowing that if you just take time to Google, you will get those kind of pictures, and you can check the date it was posted. It may be 10 years ago it was posted. But people don't take the trouble, isn't it? Oh, Nigerians like rumors, and they fly with rumors. And a lot of people who do this, they go to church, you know. I mean, that is capable of causing war, isn't it? It's capable of causing war, but people deliberately post those things. Actually, the sins people are committing on social media may be worse than the one they are committing in real life. Do you know that? If you post what is it that caused the genocide in Rwanda? Was it not media broadcast? Media broadcast caused the immediate cause of the genocide in Rwanda. And people sit down by their computer and fabricate lies and post it. And the next day, they are jumping around in church, say they are praising God. Yeah, and that is it. That please do yourself and do us a favor. Don't forward a message simply because you receive it. Check the authenticity out before you forward. When you forward, it means I agree with everything this thing has said. Do you understand that that's what you are saying? Because when I receive message from any of you, it tells me the kind of human being you are. Oh, sure. It tells me the kind of human being you are. So if it is trash, I will say, I thought this madam was a proper human being. I didn't know that. Yeah, because what you promote says a lot about you. Don't forward what you do not endorse. Can we say that together? Please don't forward before you read the material. Say it. Give to God a well-organized society. Is it part of what we give to God? Is our society today organized well enough to offer to God? We have a society that we cannot, in all fairness, in all seriousness, say we are offering to God the way it is. We need to do some homework, isn't it? We have a responsibility as Christians to offer to God a well-organized society whose laws and policies are in accord with the fear of God and His divine purpose. We have a responsibility. And I always say, lawyers, learned gentlemen and women, you have a responsibility perhaps more than the rest of us in terms of laws. I don't know what is wrong with law reform in this country. Many other societies that were under colonial rule have done quite some work in law reform. In this country, you still have situations where we are operating archaic, anachronistic laws. And yet, we have law reform commission. And I'm saying that we do have groups, Christian lawyers, Catholic lawyers. We have various groups of lawyers. What are you doing about reforming our laws? Because if laws and policies are archaic, outmoded, if the wheel of justice rolls so slowly that people are denied justice, now what is your role as a lawyer? So lawyers here and those looking at me, you have work to do. It is not enough for you to be progressing in your chambers. What are you doing for society? What are you doing so that we may offer to God a better organized society? I have had a couple of people on my program, Reflections, and they will say, oh, the churches are not doing enough. The churches are... I say, listen, I call you here because you are a lawyer. When I call a priest, we shall discuss what the churches must do. But when I call a lawyer, I mean what the law. And there are no better persons, better place than those who have read law to see that there are too many problems with the way our law is operated, and the judiciary is operated, and the police system, and so on. Something should be done and must be done to update our laws and to update the sanction system so that the laws may not just be empty instruments. Give to God a well-organized society where justice and equity are in place, where human rights and dignity reign. You know, every acting big man now in our society goes around without plate number. Sews a jacket to cover plate number. Now, we need people who will take on public interest litigations against this nonsense. Every other acting big man, even the one that my little car is better than his own, sews jacket and puts in covers his plate number. I have gone to every level in FROSC to ask, at the highest level, to ask, what is this covering of plate number? Is it legal? They say it is illegal. Not even the president of the country should cover his plate number. It should be Presidency 1. Every car that is meant to be on the road, we are supposed to know the identity of that car. If you park the car in your house and you remove the plate number, that's okay. As soon as you come out of your gate and enter the road, it is supposed to be identified and identifiable. Where are the lawyers here? Is it legal? Maybe the lawyers don't know. Or the lawyers here have started covering their number. Who is going to do this? If the lawyers don't help us to do these clear, obvious infractions of the law, if the lawyers don't help us to do it, is it the woman selling granite on the road that will help us? It is happening so badly. If one of those cars should push you out of the road and you have no way of knowing who. And we must do something about it. We cannot offer this kind of country the way it is organized or disorganized. We cannot offer it to God. This is the worship that God wants. This is the tax we must pay to God if we are to belong to His kingdom. Offer your heart. Offer your spirit, offer your soul, offer your society, offer your family to God in a purposeful, meaningful, God-fearing manner. Jesus demonstrates, admonishes his adversaries and ourselves. Worry less about what is due to Caesar. Pay more attention to God and the presence of his Son in your midst. Because like I said, if you pay attention to God and to a truly godly life, then you will be the best of citizens. Do you know that? You'll be the most law-abiding citizens. The only laws you will break are those that you are ready to suffer for breaking because they are evil. Render to God the worship that is his due. As Christians, we have dual citizenship. We are citizens of our various countries and at the same time citizens of God's kingdom. We have privileges and obligations in each one. We must pay tribute to the state, but also tribute to God. Jesus' answer indicates that there needs not be a conflict between the demands of the state and the demands of God, since all authority ultimately comes from God. Do you understand that? There needs not be any conflict between the demands of the state and the demands of God, since all authority comes from God. Yes, as citizens of our country, we respect constituted authority. We obey just laws. And you see how I qualify the laws? What did I call them? Just laws. There have been instances where people have exercised conscientious objection. They have suffered for it in this society, where they see those motorcades coming and they refuse to move out of the road because they have a right to the road. And they think that this is oppressive for one person to chase others from the road. It is oppressive. Now, while doing that, they know they will suffer for it, right? That's conscientious objection. Obey just laws, pay taxes for the running of society, contribute to the common good. The rich should help the poor, the strong should help the weak, the educated should help the ignorant. All these are part of being good citizens. As citizens of God's kingdom, worship God and God alone. Reverence God in the neighbor and hold each person as sacred. This is part of worshiping God, you know. People think that worshiping God is only going to the house of worship and singing and dancing and doing vigil and casting out devils. Worshiping God is seeing God in your neighbor. That is part of it. Seeing your neighbor as sacred, because your neighbor is created in the image of God. Reverence God not only vertically but also horizontally in the neighbor, and hold each person as what? Sacred. Now, brothers and sisters, if you are going to hold each human being as sacred, it has many implications for the way we conduct our lives, right? It has many implications. Tell your friends on Facebook, when they condemn whole ethnic groups, when they condemn whole zones of the country, tell them that those people are also children of God. They are sacred. Be careful what you say about one child, what one child of God says about another child of God. Just know that if you are a Christian, not only Christians are created in the image of God. Read the book of Genesis 1 and 2. Who are those created in the image of God? All human beings. So be careful when you make pronouncements and say things as if you are the only one created in the image of God. Do you understand that? Promote a witness to his truth and shine his light. Witness to the truth of God and shine his light. That's part of being citizens of God's kingdom, worshiping God. Promote human dignity and justice and peace and reconciliation. I will never tire to say this is part of worshiping God. Fight corruption. Flee the corrupt lifestyle that is so much in our society. That's part of worshiping God. Worshiping God is not it's not limited to the ritual activities of kneeling down and praying or fasting. It includes being just, being truthful, being honest, being transparent. It includes making efforts to be reconciled and to be a reconciler, a peacemaker. So even non-Christians who are engaged in conflict resolution and peace building, they are doing God's work, aren't they? Because Cyrus, whom we read about today, was not a Christian, was not a Jew, but he was made to do God's work. Be bearers of God's grace and God's peace. There is no contradiction between the worship of God, I say, and being a good citizen. Where the contradiction will be actually is to be a bad citizen and say you are a good child of God. It is a matter of putting first things first. Our faith in God and our worship of Him should express itself. It should be shown in our service of neighbor and in our commitment to the common good. Let me explain that there is a difference between being committed to the common good and being a nationalist. Actually, with Christianity, nationalism, when it means my country, good or bad, it's not acceptable to Christ. Because in Christ there is no East, there is no West, there is no Jew, there is no Gentile. Do you understand? There is a difference between commitment to the common good, to be committed to the good of your society, the good of the poor, hospitals, schools, orphanages, and so on and so forth, to be committed to those things in your country. That is to be a good citizen of your country in a Christian understanding. But nationalism, what is called nationalism, these days it can be negative, especially for us Christians. If that means my clan, and I will defend my clan right or wrong, I will defend my ethnic group right or wrong, and see other ethnic groups as if they are lesser human beings than our own. If that is what some people mean by nationalism, that is unacceptable to Christians. Do you understand? So, for the Christian, politics should be seen as what? Faith in action. What did I say? Politics should be seen as faith in action. We have had too many people in politics who have not shown their faith, who have not demonstrated that they believe in this one true God for whom all citizens are children. Which is why we have come to see politics in this society often as a dirty game. A lot of very pious people can't go into politics in this country. True or false? Once upon a time, a very well-known politician in this country said, you want to be a politician? Can you remove your agbada in the marketplace and fight? Some of you remember that. Can you remove your agbada in the marketplace and fight? If you can't, then you can't do politics. You want to be a politician? Can you see that it is evening and say it is morning? Can you lie very well? Now, if that is the image of politics, then that is sad, isn't it? Politics should be seen as faith in action. So the best among us are supposed to go and show their faith in politics. The best among us. Enough of abandoning politics to riffraffs and street urchins and gangsters and thugs. Enough of that. We need the best among us. The best among us should be encouraged to go into politics. I am right now preparing a talk about restructuring. And I say that an element of restructuring that we need to do in our society today is that the best among us from our villages who have been vice chancellors of universities, MDs of major international corporations, who have been in big positions, generals in the army, they should go and seek to be counselors in their local government, so as to raise the level of politics in the grassroots. Because if the level of politics in the grassroots is not raised, then the kind of people you will have as senators and governors and so on will be ex-thugs and ex-street urchins, if you don't raise the level of politics. And so I want to challenge Nigerians. I want to challenge people who have held big positions in private corporations, in educational institutions, to return to their villages and seek to be counselors. I mean what? Counselors. That is what Lee Kuan Yew did after being president for 25, I don't know how many years. He went back to his municipal council to be, yes. Why can't a general, a retired general, go and be counselor in charge of security in his local government area? If we had that kind of situation, the level of our democracy will rise. Bishe, when you finish doing your MD, seek, not commissioner, not governor, go to your local government. Because when that happens, then will some governor be able to take all the money of the local government? When you have high level people at the local level. And that is where politics really happens. Let qualified people go and put their faith into action in the local areas. If we do not begin to do that, there will be no hope for our society. If we leave it at the hands of criminals and thugs. Life is a unity of body and soul, secular and religious. So our belonging to God is inseparable from our belonging to this world. Because the world is God's world. In a state run according to God's will, failure to be a good citizen is failure to be a good Christian. To disobey just laws made for the harmonious existence and smooth running of society, what does the red light do? Putting traffic light is made for the harmonious existence and smooth running, isn't it? When you disobey it, what do? You disobey God. To cheat the state is to cheat fellow citizens, and to cheat fellow citizens is to cheat God. Do we understand this? All Nigerian Christians who are in church every Sunday singing and dancing and praising God and fasting and doing vigil, do you recognize that to cheat the state is to cheat fellow citizens who are children of God, and to cheat fellow citizens is to cheat God? The state has a role, but the power of the state is limited. The power of the state does not supplant God. In admonishing us to give to Caesar what is Caesar's, it is assumed that Caesar's claim will be just, isn't it? Are you with me? When they say give to Caesar what is Caesar's, meaning obey the state, it is assumed that the state will be just. Jesus wasn't giving Caesar a blank check. Caesar does not possess anything independent of God. Everything that Caesar possesses, he or she possesses it under God. Everything belongs to God, including who? Caesar himself. To ask Christians to give to Caesar what is Caesar's is to assume that those in authority at the local level, at the state level, at the national level, at every level, will recognize that their power and authority is derivative and only relative to the power and authority of God, the supreme sovereign. Do you understand that? All exercise of authority and power must be evaluated in the light of God's will and God's plan. The political arena must always be subject to the moral and religious evaluation. The political arena does not exist independent of God and the laws of God and the values of our faith. If Caesar is subservient to God, then his laws and policies will be in accord with God's will. If there is a clash between our obligation to God and the demands of the state, then the Christian should have no doubt which comes first. If not fear. The only obstacle is fear. Because the Christian should have no doubt when there is a clash between the obligations to the state and obligation to God. Do you have any doubt as to which one should come first? Far from being a dirty game, politics should be seen, as I said, as faith in action. Our faith in God can spur us on to a passionate commitment to the welfare of our society. And it is that passionate commitment to the welfare of society that should be the core of politics. That's what should inspire people to politics. People are not supposed to go into politics as another profession to get job. We shouldn't accept jobless people going into politics. We should look for people who are well engaged and persuade them to come into politics. On the relationship between his religion and his politics, Gandhi says what? Can you read? I am in politics because I cannot separate life from belief. Because I believe in God, I have to enter politics. Politics is my service of God. Faith in action indeed. Julius Nyerere is one of our best examples of a devoted Catholic and an African statesman who tried to put his faith into action in the conduct of politics. Dag Hammarskjöld, first Secretary General of the United Nations, he says, can we read? What greater vocation is there than to assume responsibility for national and international affairs, to work for peace and justice in the world, for the betterment of human life for all. No life is more satisfactory than that of selfless service to your country or to humanity. So it is work, it is God's work, it is a vocation, God's work. Politics is supposed to be seen as a calling for service, not an invitation to come and eat. Christians must always act in accordance with their enlightened conscience. The Christian in politics or public office is called upon to give credible witness to his or her Christian values. That is why Christians go out to demonstrate. What does this one say? Abortion is murder. It's a Christian duty to let society know. When it comes to taking a public stand and voting for or against unjust, oppressive, or morally objectionable legislations or policies that are against the poor and the weak, including the unborn weak, including the elderly weak, because there are societies who make policies against the elderly weak, not only the unborn weak. When it comes to those kind of situations, the legislation of abortion and prostitution. Have you seen in Abuja National Association of Prostitutes doing demonstration for the acknowledgement of their rights? Commercial workers, National Association of Commercial. Oh, you don't know they have association? Actually, I encountered them about 12, 13 years ago in Abuja. They came from all over. Port Harcourt and Abuja and Lagos. Now, when they are there demonstrating, where are you to do your own counter demonstration? Because we are in a society where whoever speaks loudest is the one that is heard. If you are not there, then the newspapers the next day will say, Kai, these people have won. You who have a different opinion, you sit down in your house. You sit down, you don't want to be bothered. As fella says, hey, my wife, my child, if I go and do that, if anything happens to me, my wife, whatever. You will be there. And prostitution will become legalized. Yes, legal recognition of homosexual unions. I hope you know that there are many pressure groups in our society with a lot of inducement, financial inducement, for us to legalize homosexuality. Where are you to demonstrate against it? Where are you? The ejection of poor settlers around our cities without alternative accommodation. I insist, and for all our rulers, all those who run our affairs, that many countries are signatory to the protocol, the habitat protocols. When a people have stayed in a particular place for 5 years, they have a right. You can't move them without providing alternatives. All those who run our affairs should recognize that. You have, let's say, a place like Mechanic Village. You have Day. You have people begin to settle there. As they settle there, if you are a serious government, the next day you see some blocks coming up, you should go and remove it from there and stop them settling. But you have situations in this country where people settle for 20 years. The children have grown up there. Then one day bulldozer arrives in the place. It is an unjust system. It is evil. Do you understand? To say they have no papers, but where were you when they were settling there? And there are international conventions and protocols to which Nigeria is signatory that make it illegal to remove settlers who have stayed up to 5 years in the place and nobody touched them. You don't go afterwards because people have a right to shelter. If you, the government, cannot assist them in getting the shelter, if they settle somewhere and immediately you don't remove them and they have settled there 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, there is what is called the law of prescription. The law of prescription says that they are de facto. The occupier is de facto the owner. It's like a lot of these unoccupied houses all over the place. I am looking forward to a government that will make laws that if a house is empty for 5 years, that people have a right to occupy them. Why should people be homeless while there are so many empty houses all over the place? It is unfair. It is unjust. Because this generation of human beings has a right to accommodation. Why will people be preparing for their great-grandchildren when this generation has not had accommodation? These are things for which the Christians should be fighting as part of our Christian responsibility, as part of our worship of God. In those days, as I was highly involved in this, it is like, oh my God, which one being owned? It is my Christian responsibility. Because those affected are God's children. So, the extreme structural adjustment programs that crush the poor. Look at what has happened to African countries since 1985. Our economy just kept going. I traveled to the United States in 1988. My ticket was 1,000 naira because it was 1 naira to $1. Today it's 1 naira to $350 to 350 naira, and we have just kept going. It is an unfair structure. Our leaders just keep accepting all the suggestions to devalue and devalue and devalue until there is absolutely nothing. Nigerians were not lazy before. Nigerians were working. It is policies, bad policies, not well thought through policies that reduced us to this. And look at on the streets, you see Nigerians are beggars all over the place. So shameful. But I was not born to meet my people as beggars. It is poor leadership that has put us where we are. I wasn't born to meet Nigerians as beggars. It is our responsibility to take interest in the policies of our government. When they say a new budget has come, how many of you try to read the budget document to make comment? Yes, it's our responsibility to publicly say no to all the evils in the society. It's part of our godly work. Say no to rape. Say no to kidnap. Say no to the death penalty. Say no to any more public executions or private executions. Our church says that the death penalty is not acceptable today. We have ways of containing criminals, of locking criminals up for life. We have ways of doing that. If you kill a criminal, how do you teach that criminal by killing him that killing is evil? All you have done is that you are as much criminal as the people whom you are killing. You disrespect life as much as the people you are supposed to teach the dignity of and sanctity of human life. Now, after Mass, those who do not understand this, please ask me, because I know a lot of people here who are crying for blood of so-called criminals. But this is the position of the Catholic Church. It's not Father George's opinion. It's the position of the church, a long-standing position of the church. And you can go and read, Google the Catholic Church and capital punishment. And only three weeks ago, the Pope issued another statement on it. No human being has the right to take another human being's life. Even when that human being is threatening us, as soon as we can arrest him and chain him, then there's a problem. To now take the life of a vulnerable person, the person whom you have arrested and chained. Because that will be cold blood. It's different from when a criminal is after you and you succeed in killing him. That's different. Bring back our girls. A lot of people were involved in this. A few people were involved in this, and the majority of people were just sitting down there. But bring back our girls. You see the cardinal there with them. It means the cardinal recognizes that it is part of my Christian responsibility to be involved in this kind of protest, to ask the government to do something. Say no to LGBT. Say no to homosexuality. Marriage should be for one man, one woman. The traditional marriage system of one man, one woman. Christians who are convinced of this should show it, should be involved. Don't just sit down there. You sit down there, you are making a statement, as Bonhoeffer says. Say no to human trafficking. Help end child prostitution. Help end child labor. These are all things that we should be involved in, one or the other. And I ask, which one are you involved in? Of all these issues, which one are you involved in? Examples of those who have given loud witness to their faith at great cost include Joseph in Genesis, Daniel in the book of Daniel shown there, chapter 1, 6 and 13, the 7 Maccabean brothers and their mother, book of Maccabees, second book of Maccabees, chapter 7, Peter, it is better to obey God than man, Stephen, Acts 6, Thomas More, I have already mentioned him, in 1535, the Martyrs of Uganda, 1885, Franz Jagerstrasse, 1943, and Dietrich Bonhoeffer, 1945. Dietrich Bonhoeffer says, we are not to simply bandage the wounds of the victims beneath the wheels of injustice. Look, let me explain the image. You have a car, and there is somebody that the tires of the car are standing upon, and the guy is screaming. You take oil to go and soothe his wound under the car. What are you supposed to do first? We are to drive a spoke into the wheel itself. Not just bandage the wound of the victim that is being crushed there by the wheel. But driving a spoke onto the wheel, you know what it does? It punctures the tire. And do you think that the person who inflated the tire will be happy with you? He says, Silence in the face of evil is. So many of you who don't take part in any of these things I have mentioned, you don't take part, you cannot be bothered, you don't take part in any. You are being silent. And the Bonhoeffer says to be silent is to be doing evil. Not to speak is. Say it now. Not to speak. Is that a paradox? Not to say something is to say something very loudly. Not to act is to act. God will not hold us guiltless. Meaning God will hold us guilty. Do you understand? Summary then. The Lord's is the earth and its fullness. Psalm 24. All authority comes from God. Romans 13. Obedience to constituted authority is obedience to God. 1 Peter 2. In the face of conflict between God and Caesar, it is better to obey God rather than man. Proverbs 28:1. Acts 4:19. Acts 5:29. Do not fear those who kill the body and after that can do nothing more. Fear him rather. After he has killed the body, has authority to cast it into hell. Yes, fear him. Luke 12. And more passages. The honor due to constituted authority. Exodus 22:28, Acts 23:5. Civic righteousness. Proverbs 11:11, Proverbs 14:34, Proverbs 29:2. Proverbs 29:2 says, when the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. But when the wicked rule, the people groan. Groan. And our civic responsibilities or duties, Matthew 17:27, Titus 3:1, 1 Peter 2:13-14. Heavenly Father, we thank you. We praise you. We glorify your holy name for your many blessings. Thank you for your love and your goodness. Thank you for showing us today through the passage of Isaiah, through the gospel of Matthew. Thank you for showing us that all authority, all that is on earth belongs to you. And we must work hard on a daily basis to offer them back to you. That even our state, our country belongs to you. The leadership belongs to you. Our civic duties, they belong to you. Teach us how to use our commitments to the common good as service to your kingdom. Show us how to be good citizens, good Christians whose faith show in their actions in public life. Show us how to bring together in unity our worship inside the church and our civic responsibilities outside, so that we may let our light shine in public life. Lord, raise up men and women, good men and women, godly men and women, who will go into politics in this society to transform our affairs from the present state of disorder to a more orderly society where the common good is priority to the glory of your name, through Christ our Lord.